Hello there. It's another edition of A Lot of Help with James Lott Jr. I am James Lott Jr., certified life coach, professional organizer, and a host of other things. And I have a great guest, is someone that I'm very excited to talk to because I've heard of their mission and their company, Powerful U, for several years now. And so when this came to my attention, I was like, yes, I want to talk to one of the founders of this movement and company. And right now we're both at home because, it's that safer at home thing. And so if you hear noises and stuff, it's just real life, folks. This is not super polished or anything, because life isn't super polished, right? So my guest is the creator of Powerful U. It's a seminar company. He's the co-author of this amazing award-winning film called Perception: Seeing is Not Believing. And I'm so happy to have him on here. Now, make sure I say your last name correctly. James Purpura?
Yeah, Purpura. That's perfect.
All right. How are you, James?
I am good, James. How are you?
I don't really interview that many Jameses that often. So it's kind of, it's a common name. It's kind of funny to me. I'm like, I'm talking to myself. What's going on?
Right. I've actually debated changing my name, but then my kids would just make fun of me forever. So I'm like, I'll just go with it. Right. I'll just ride it out. It's not an exciting name, but it's a sturdy name.
It actually really is a strong name, sturdy. It's like, I'm sturdy and strong, I think. So I like to.
Yeah, you look sturdy and strong. It's funny because when I was a kid, I went by Jimmy, right? And people, my mom, Jimmy. And actually, I went through that until a lot of the trauma in my life happened. And as a part of changing who I was and rebranding myself, I switched from Jim to James. So.
Well, let me share a quick thing from my name thing, a name game. I was Jamie because my father was James. We had an uncle. My father was Jim. We had an uncle James, and I had a cousin named Jamie. So it was weird, like just too many of us running around. So I was Jamie as a kid till I turned 13, and I decided I'm gonna be James. I don't want to be Jim, Jimbo, Jimmy. I don't want to be that stuff. I am James. Then when I had kids, I became Papa Jamie.
Wow, that's awesome.
I came back around, and to the grandkids, I'm Papa Jamie. So it's kind of funny. I rebranded myself as James, but the Jamie part came later, and now it's a term of endearment. Because a lot of my trauma in my life was associated with the Jamie brand, so to speak. It was associated with the young life. I hated it, but now I reclaimed it, but differently. That makes sense.
So, it's funny because we actually have a really deep connection there. So my dad's name was John, but my stepdad who raised me, his name was Jim. And he also had a son who was Jim. And because he was the stepson coming in, they called him Jamie, right? And it actually created a lot of trauma inside of him. And I obviously wasn't my choice, right? You get into these mixed families and something as simple as changing somebody's name, and changing their identity when they're young can cause trauma, and my brother, who passed away years ago, he, eventually when he got older, he renamed himself, did the same thing. And so, it was just one of those things that, you don't know the power of a name until somebody takes it away from you and says, well, that's not actually you now. We're going to call you something totally different, right? So it's an interesting scenario.
I had two siblings who changed their names. I have two siblings. My brother I live with and a sister of mine. They both changed their first and last names. They changed everything because of our trauma as a kid. They changed everything. And I felt like they were running on some level, but I also get that a name can affect you a certain way. Like when someone looks at you as Jim, they look at you differently than a James. Like I've noticed that. And I've also noticed when people meet me, they'll go, hi, Jim. They'll automatically.
Yeah, they do that sometimes, right? It's really weird. But some people will ask that, they just make that assumption, right? But some people will be like, you go by Jim or James. And you're right, because to me, Jim gives them permission to do any variation. Jimbo,
yes.
Jimmy Dean, right? And you're just like, okay. Like, I actually like the name James. I hate the name Jim, Jimmy. Sorry to any Jims out there.
My dad's Jim Lott. He goes by Jim Lott. You can have it. I'm just like, that's not for me. But I agree with you. I think when they nickname you and give you a nickname, so to speak, some people are named Jim. I know some folks who are named Jimmy. That's their name. Like Tommy or something. I know some people that they're not Thomas. I have a friend named Tony who's not. There's other names. Just that's their name. It does give you a carte blanche to treat you a certain way, or they're, as I'm tying this into you, perception of you.
Well, and that's just it. I mean, that's kind of wrapping into what, we're talking about here
Yes.
is that, these ideas and concepts we have about ourselves are literally what shape our perception, which dictates a big part of how our lives are going to turn out, right? And so, for my brother, for instance, just him being called Jamie was a very traumatic experience for him, right? And he was also a gay man, right? And so he was in the closet with that, and there was all of this different trauma. And we went to very strict Christian churches that didn't accept that type of behavior, and so for him it really shaped his world. He had a massive identity crisis around who he was and what that meant to him, and it turned out to be really bad for him. So
I know it's interesting, very interesting. But I think names are very important, and this ties into. Um, I like your mission, and 'cause I was writing this down. Um, your mission is your goal is to improve the lives of billions of people. I love that. I'm all about thinking big. I'm like, why not? I think I have no that to me. Why not do that? But I love that your whole thing is about changing your perception, and this is is your tagline: transform your life. And I believe that completely. I can't even stress the word completely enough. How much I agree with that. And my clients, I love this thing where they'll go, what if this doesn't happen? I go, what if it does?
right.
Or what if that falls down? What if you don't fall down? Like it's like I'm always doing it. They get annoyed with me sometimes because I say that to my friends too. I say it all the time. What if I go through the door and nothing happens? Well, what if you go through the door and something does happen? They're like, shut up, James. We laugh about it, but I'm like, but I'm serious. It's about perception. So
Well, I think what you just said there has a really important connotation, because I think that people have a fundamental misunderstanding about what perception is, how it works. In our book and our movie, we say that there are two concepts that dictate everything that you are, everything that you do, and everything that you feel. And those two concepts are perception and emotions. And so they literally are, to understand a perception is to understand life, right? And the vast majority of people don't understand the fundamental principles of it. And so it's like, if those are the principles that dictate my life, shouldn't I become an expert in those, right? Shouldn't I understand them completely? And that's what we're encouraging people to do, because it's as simple as the example you just gave. People are saying, well, what if this happens? What are they doing? They're focused on the negative potential outcome, right? And so let's talk about perception as it relates to negativity and positivity. And you can use this with your friends the next time they say it. Is that when you focus on the most negative possible outcome, you actually make that outcome more probable, right? And there's science behind that.
yeah,
And let me tell you what it is that the basic underlying fundamental behind perception is you don't see reality, right? You just don't see reality. And so when I say that to people, they're like, oh yeah, I know, or I don't know, right? And it's like, well, what do you mean? It feels real, and it does feel real, but our minds, you have to think about our minds as a supercomputer. When you go to Google and you type in a word, seconds and sometimes instantly, it literally just delivers a massive amount of data to you. Well, our minds work the same way. They work in real time. So when we walk into a room, we have no idea what's happening in that room, right? And so we have to give it context. And so what happens is that when you walk into a room and you're having an experience, your mind does something similar to a Google search. And it says, what experiences have I had in the past that are similar to this experience? And it delivers that as your meaning. So your meaning, you don't see reality, you see an assumption of what you think reality is based on what it was in the past, right? And so, people often say to me, what's the difference between negativity and positivity? Now, here's the difference, and this is really interesting. I'd love you to tell your friends this, is every pessimist I've ever met in my life says the same thing. I'm not a pessimist, I'm a realist.
I've heard that. I've heard that. I've heard that too. I've heard that.
And it's like, well, here's what the pessimist fails to understand, is that their pessimistic view is no more or less grounded in reality than my optimistic view. But there is a cost and a benefit to pessimism. Let me give you the cost.
Tell me.
So when you take the most negative outlook, right, of a situation, essentially it shuts down the field of possibilities. So here's what the field of possibility is. Your perception, much like your eyesight, works in a limiting field, right? You can only see that which you believe to be possible, right? And I'll explain that in a minute. But so essentially what happens is negativity shuts you down. I mean, you can notice it, like your shoulders come down, your head's down, right? You're not on the lookout for potential opportunities. And so how many of the opportunities that you failed to see were you able to jump into? Zero, right? And so what happens is for pessimists is they focus in on the most negative aspects of a situation, and they actually make that situation more probable because they're failing to see the other opportunities that are around them. Now, here's the benefit to pessimism. They get to be right. Told you it was going to be bad. Told you. I told you.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I told you it was all going to be terrible, right? Pessimists are always right. You know,
right.
It's like, I was right. My life is terrible. See? Right? And so good luck on being right, but here's the cost, right? You don't get to live your dreams.
Right.
Because living your dreams is all about being open to what? The possibilities, right? And I tell people all the time, it's like, you got to be open. They're like, what do I got to be open to? That you're wrong. What am I wrong about? Oh, well, it turns out just about everything. And that's good.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly.
So that's how pessimism and that negativity actually makes those things more probable.
I'm so glad you said something in there that I'm so glad you said it, because I say it all the time to you. I'm tired of this. I'm being real. I'm just being real. I'm being real. Yeah, you're being real, something, but you're not being real. I'm like, it's like you're really not listening to the universe. You're really narrowing your path when you're just negative.
Well, when people are being real, they're being truthful in that, in the sense that based on their past experiences,
right?
Based on a past experience, this is the most likely thing that's going to happen in this scenario. But the past has nothing to do with the present. So we're always inserting the past onto the present. Now, here's what happens is that, so we have an experience, it's not, let's say it doesn't serve us, right? And then that experience serves as the data for our next perceptions. Or, when we have another experience that's similar to it, we go back and we go, oh, well, this is what happened last time. This is probably going to happen this time. And then what happens is that because we focused on that, it happens, and then the pattern starts reinforcing itself. And the truth is, yes, you're being real in the sense that this is what's generally happened to you in the past, but it doesn't have to happen that way in the present or in the future. You're literally inserting your will to make it happen that way.
Well, I say you should never borrow from your past to build your future. It's always that.
We don't have a choice in the way perception works.
Well, I mean, we know
after it comes out.
Right. We know, and that's the thing. It's like, you have to find a way to change the mindset to not go back there and bring it and make it happen in your future. I always believe. Right.
So I think there's a really great narrative that supports this and make people understand it better. Got a question for you, James. Can you have the thing you want most in the world, or at least the opportunity to get that thing, right in front of your face and just not see it?
Yes.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay. So most of your listeners probably said, no, I would recognize it's the thing I want most in the world, right? So I'm going to tell you a simple story. And the simple story demonstrates this very thing. And it demonstrates how the mind works. I want you to imagine a man. This man wants more than anything to be loved. He wants to be in a relationship. Unfortunately, he has really low self-esteem, terrible self-image. One day, this man walks into a store and he walks up into the counter. Obviously, it's before the coronavirus.
Right? Oh, yes, okay, right.
Yeah. We don't walk up to counters anymore, but
there's
a glass there. But so he walks up to the counter. Let's imagine there's no glass, right? And the girl behind the counter starts flirting with him. My question for you, James, is does he recognize the girl is flirting with him? No. So most people say that story because they know I got him. It's like, probably not. And that's the right answer. And so if you demonstrated that, if you said probably not or no, you already know how perception works, which means the reality is the girl's flirting with him. So he doesn't see reality, right?
He's
so,
thinking, she's not, I know she's not flirting with me. Like,
or like, oh, the girl like this, why is she talking to me? She might even be teasing me, right? Whatever it is.
Exactly.
And so, but here's the deal. It's like, here's what I tell people to think about. If this man has the thing that he wants most in the world sitting right in front of his face and he just can't see it, what if that's happening to you? And that's actually the truth. It is happening to you every day. When people hear the story, they think it's like a cute analogy. It's not. It's the reality of perception. Because if you in fact believe the things that you wanted were possible, then you would already have them, right? That's just the way it works, right? And so you're not seeing the opportunities. The question is, why doesn't he see it, right? And the answer is like, because a belief, which is his, low self-esteem, is being projected onto the experience, and it's preventing him to see what's clearly happening. Well, that process happens all day long. And so have you ever heard of like the law of attraction?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So people talk about it all the time, but they actually misunderstand it. And let me tell you why. Because based on the law of attraction here, or based on the laws of perception, here's how the law of attraction actually works. And this is really helpful for people is the underlying thought behind perception is you can only see what you believe to be possible. The guy didn't see the girl flirting with him because he didn't believe it was possible. Why? Why didn't he see it? Well, here's why. It's actually a very simple concept. Would you go to the end of a rainbow and look for a pot of gold, James?
Sure, why not?
Okay, for other than fun, right? Would you expect to find it, right?
I would think so. They always talk about at the end of the rainbow, the pot of gold. They always say there is one there. So I mean, that's a good question. I would think there'd be one there, hopefully.
I know we're playing, but nobody goes to the end of a rainbow and looks for a pot of gold because they don't believe it's going to be there, right? And so you don't go looking for something you don't believe is there. And so your mind works the same way. So your subconscious and unconscious mind is taking in everything, right? But it's got a filter by which it looks for things, and it's based on your beliefs. The guy didn't see the girl flirting on him because he didn't believe it was possible. Therefore, his mind wasn't looking for it, right? That's how the perception works. And so how that relates to the law of attraction is this. When you get a vision board and you put it in front of you and you start visualizing those things in your lives, it is not so some magical force can bring that to you. It's so that you can foster belief so that you can see the opportunities that are already there. That's the law of attraction, because we live in an infinite number of possibilities. People are like, well, I see everything. Really? Do you see everything? I'll give you one more thing to challenge you. James, I want you to think about, and I want all your listeners to think about the car that you're driving right now.
Okay.
Once you think about the day you went and picked out this shiny new car, or old jalopy, whatever it is, right? And you bring it home. And then the next day you start driving around your hometown and you recognize that everybody in your town is driving that same car. And you're like,
in LA, it's a
no.
Prius. Everybody has Priuses. Everybody has
Right. But the point is that in this experience, it's like you didn't recognize these cars were everywhere until either you decided you were going to get it or you got it because your mind's now looking for that, right? It's identifying with that. And so there's so much going on at any given point that your mind only looks for things that you believe are possible. So as you start to foster belief around your goals, your dreams, your ideas, you will start seeing more of the available opportunities.
No, I agree with that. It's funny because I work in Hollywood, obviously. That's one of the things I do. And with actors, I'll meet an actor and we'll do a show together and I'm interviewing them and they'll mention their resume. And then I go, wait a minute, I did see that TV show and I did see that movie. Because are you saying, because I did not know them and I would not have looked for them. So now when I see a TV show, I'm like, oh my God, there she is. Oh my God, there she is. Oh my God, there she is. Like now you start noticing her in everything that you've watched. And she listed 10 things she's done. So I like that analogy because I do agree with that. It's like all of a sudden now I'm open to her. I know who she is. And so she told me this stuff. So now I'm looking and seeing, oh yeah, there's a lot of people you go, they've been around for a long time. I just never pay attention to them until you get them in your orbit. And you go, oh, now I know who they are. And now you notice them in everything.
Your mind gravitates towards that information. So one other thing your perception does is that, its main priority is safety. It doesn't care if you're happy. It doesn't care if you're fulfilled. It doesn't care if you want your goals. It's always moving you towards the idea of certainty, right? Certainty is safety. Uncertainty is unsafety. And so basically what your mind is, it's literally what you would call a probability calculator. It's always trying to calculate what's going to happen next to keep you safe, right? And so in that basis of probability, it's like, if you do not place all of your needs, desires, wants, all your goals and gain clarity around them, right? And put importance or an important, this is why the why is so important. It's like, why? You know, people are always talking about the why. Do you know your why? You understand your why? And I'm like, I understand my why, right? It's like, why? And it's like, because that's the priority in your mind, is that when your why becomes stronger, it raises up on the level of your priorities. And then your mind will start gravitating towards information that supports those wants and desires.
I'm gonna go back to the pot of gold. What if your belief is at the end of the rainbow is a pot of gold? I mean, I'm being serious. What if that is like, because you can use that analogy for anything. Like, what if your belief is beliefs? You know, beliefs come to this too. And I want to know what your thoughts are on beliefs in relation to perception. So, what if you believe a certain thing, and so that how does that inform your perception? I mean, doesn't it?
It's everything. It is your perception, because that's what the information you're sourcing for your information. So that's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that, James.
Good.
But let me explain something to you, right? So there's a narrative that I have, and this narrative helps a lot of people. James, what if I told you you've never made a bad decision? What would you say?
Oh, I would say that's a lie. I mean, well, no, actually, no. It says like,
no, don't spin it. Don't spin it. I want the honesty.
No, I'm talking about for myself, because I remember I'm certified.
Learning. You're like learning.
At first, I would say possibly you're lying. But if I thought about it for a second, which I just did, I would say, no, correction. Actually, there's no bad decision. Every decision informs who you are today.
Right. So, I mean, but in the sense of, you know, have you ever made a decision that disempowered you? Have you ever made a decision? Yeah. Okay. So, you know, most people think those are a bad decision. And here's the challenge, is that we're constantly beating ourselves up for all of the bad decisions we make and the, you know, actions we take. And so, but the truth is, not only have you never made a bad decision, James, you're not even capable of it. And either are any of your listeners. And I know I just lost half the audience, but listen to me, because this is really important, right? So if I've never made a bad decision, what have I made? You've made decisions with bad information, right? What's the difference? Is it phonetics? No. And it's really important to understand is that we all make decisions the same way. We examine all of the information that's available to us. And at the time we're making the decision, we make the best decision we can with the information we have available to us. Nobody starts off the decision-making process saying, right now I'm going to make a decision I damn well know is not in my best interest. We don't do that. We're not wired that way. And so that would be a bad decision, right? We're only ever making the best decision we can with the information we have available to you. So if your life is not what you want it to be, it's not because you've done anything wrong. It's because you made the only decision you can with the information that's available to you. And so why is that important? First of all, people need to understand there's nothing wrong with you, right? Life comes down to information. It's an information problem. Good information leads to good decisions, leads to good outcomes. Bad information leads to, you know, faulty decisions, leads to faulty outcomes. And so when you ask me if there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, people believe those types of scenarios all the time. And that's the information by which they make their decisions. So here's why perception and emotions are so important, right? Is because, or beliefs are so important, is because beliefs are what fuel your perceptions, right? And so, you know, where does your mind get the information? From your beliefs, right? If you have beliefs that aren't empowering, that don't serve you, that is the information that you're going to use to make your upcoming decisions. So if you never go back and question those beliefs, then you're stuck in a pattern forever. You're chasing pots of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? Because that's what you believe in your subconscious mind.
I want to go into words. So I believe words are very powerful. And I've taken some words out of my vocabulary, like perfection. Any word, any version of perfect, I've taken out of my vocabulary. Because I feel like there is no such thing, first of all. It's just that it doesn't serve, the word doesn't serve you. I mean, I see a lot of people who just like kill themselves over the concept of perfection. How do you feel about words in terms of?
So here's what people have to understand is this. Okay, so your perceptions are based on your beliefs, not your conscious beliefs, right? Your conscious mind only makes up 5% of your mental cognition, right? So 95% of what's going on in your mind and 100% of what's going on in your perception of the world is in your subconscious and unconscious mind. And so how do we push information into our subconscious and unconscious mind? Through our words, right? You constantly, I mean, look, you constantly telling yourself a narrative that you're not good enough and that you don't matter and that nobody loves you or you're not lovable or whatever that is, you're not talented, you're not skilled enough, anything. You are pushing massive amounts of information into your unconscious and subconscious mind that will be later used to predict what's going to happen in the future. And so it's like, why do I keep having experiences showing me that I'm not good enough? Because you shove that idea in your mind so deep that it's there, which is a perfect tie into emotions, James. And I think we got to cover emotions because they're so important.
Yes.
Let me explain emotions to people, right? Is this, most people believe their emotions are there to tell them there's something wrong on the outside. But that's not what they're there for. They're there to tell you there's something wrong on the inside, right? And so oftentimes what do we do with emotions? We repress them, we push them down, we don't, express them, or we project them onto other people. And so here's the inherent problem is that everybody's always making their emotions about other people. James, you made me mad. How dare you, right? Why could you say something like that to me, right? But, or their emotions about us. James is mad, must be about me. And so what you need to realize is that your emotions are about you, other people's emotions are about them. Well, what does that mean? And here's what it means is that anytime you have a negative emotional response, it comes down to one thing. You have an unmet expectation based on your current set of beliefs, right? And so I like to cancel expectations, right? When emotions come up, it's like, oh, hey, I got this emotion based on this expectation. So this expectation is causing me distress. I'm going to cancel that expectation so it doesn't come up again, right? But, and this phrase I use for that is something like, I'm going to cancel the expectation that I made when I had less information than I do now, right? Right. So that's number one. But why is it tied to beliefs? Here's why. James, if I told you, what's something you really like about yourself?
Personality.
Okay. And what is something you've challenged? What's a challenge you've had with yourself over the years?
I mean, like the relation to
It could be like, people think I'm a jerk, or I've had a weight challenge, or I think.
Okay. I was just right there. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's go. Wait. Let's go. Wait.
Okay. So, if I said to you, James, man, you have a terrible personality, what would you do?
I wouldn't believe you.
You'd laugh, right? You'd be like, whatever, right? Right? You would know I was kidding.
Yeah.
But if I said to you, James, you're disgustingly fat, right? Whether you respond or not, if you have that belief, it's going to hurt, right? And it may even make you angry, right? And so the question is, why do the things that upset us? And it's not because of the other person. It's because what it's doing is this. Conscious mind 5%, everything else 95%. Here's what most people don't believe. I talk to people all the time, like, I have a manifestation mindset. I'm like, really? Because you're driving a Hyundai, right? I mean, so I'm happy, not that there's anything wrong with a Hyundai, or if you're minimalist, fine, but whatever I'm seeing on the outside is not supporting what you're saying. And the question is why? In their conscious mind, they have a manifestation mindset, right? But in their unconscious mind, they don't. They're in scarcity. And so what emotions do in this scenario of, talking about how we get hurt when people say things to us is they make us aware of beliefs that we still hold true in our subconscious mind, right? I mean, if you held it true in your conscious mind, you'd be like, well, yeah, so, right? You'd be like, whatever, yeah, that's true. But if there was this contradiction, right? Like you're feeling good, like, and this, like, I want to see this about myself. And then I come in and I say something, what it does is it draws attention to the contradiction, and that's what causes the emotional response. So beliefs are our window into the subconscious mind. Our beliefs are about us. So anytime that you get upset, anytime that you feel distressed, here's what I tell people: stop. Just stop. Don't act through that panic, that distress. Say to yourself something like, why did what that person said upset me? right? What belief do I hold that pushed my button just then? And because that's the information. That's the information you need to move your life forward. Because it's like, well, how am I going to change? Because I don't know what's in my subconscious mind. Your emotions are your guide. You follow your emotions. So every time you have a negative emotional response, stop making it about other people and go, what did those words mean to me?
I want to know your thoughts on the concept of happiness, because the word happy, of course, is thrown around all the time. I want to be happy. I want to be happy. I want to be happy. You should be happy. You should be happy. You're happy, 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 happy. And you hear people, some people say, well, happiness is a state of mind. Happiness is just one of the many emotions you go through during the day. Happiness is this. So I want to know what your thoughts are on the actual word happy. Like, what does that mean?
So, I'm pulling up my computer here, so I'm not being rude. I just wrote a chapter on this in this ebook.
Oh my goodness, how fun! See, you and I are in sync. Okay, I love that.
I want to read it to you, or I can share it, whatever you want. But let me pull it up, and I'll tell you my thoughts on happy, because I think it's a great question. So let me tell you this. And here's where we're at. So I believed that life, right? That when I got money, I'd be happy, right? And it's funny because people say all the time,
I wasn't happy, so
money's not going to make you happy, right? And I'm like, well, BS may not have made you happy, but it's certainly going to make me happy. Right? And I'm like, so when we got to our first $1 million, I looked at my wife and I said, you happy? She goes, nope. I said, me either. Right. And so I was like, maybe it's just not enough money. So we went to $2 million. Right. And, again, I'm like, you happy? She's like, nope. Yeah, me either. So it was at that point we turned around and we dove into what creates happiness. Right. And so I think in this world that we're made to choose, right, between what do you want? Well, I want money and success and creativity, or I want well-being and health and happiness. And it's like, so what do we get? We get a bunch of rich people who are super miserable, and then we get a bunch of spiritual people that are super broke, right? It's like, why can't we have both? And the truth is you can have both, right? And so here's what I like to tell people. It's like, here's what you need to understand. Creating money, right, and wealth and all things material is about changing your perception of the outside world, right, through your words, through your actions. Like, so it's jumping into the observer role and questioning your interpretations post delivery, right? Creating happiness is about going in and changing your perception of the inside world, right? And so how do we do that? Well, essentially what we have to do is we have to understand how perception works in this fact. So anytime you have an experience, right? Well, let me ask you a question. Have you ever had a level of anger or, annoyance that didn't match the situation you were in?
Yes.
And did your wife point it out to you? Because mine does all the time. Like, what is right? So
when I was younger, I was a little more hostile when I was younger. I was a little more hot-headed when I was younger. So yes.
Right. So my kid spills my milk. I'm standing on the chair screaming, and my wife's like, "What's wrong with you?" Right? Like, just milk. Like, and you just like, I actually don't know. Right. And so because you don't understand the way perception works, when your mind goes back and grabs a memory, right, to dictate what's currently happening, that memory always comes with an emotion. Right. And so that's what happens is like you're standing there and all of a sudden you're raging over something stupid and you don't know why. It's because the memory that your mind accessed had an unprocessed emotion next to it. So the way you actually create happiness, and we have a whole methodology for doing this called the emotional integration technique, is that you go back, right, into your past experiences, you process the emotions that you repressed in them, right, and you imprint a new emotion onto an old experience. So the next time your perception grabs that experience to dictate what's going to happen next, it comes with a different emotional response. And that's how you create happiness. But I do want to give you the title of this chapter.
Tell me.
I'll send this to you to be done in the next couple of days. Happiness or control, you can't have both. Right?
Like that.
I mean, because control is about expectations. Yeah. Right? And so there is one core idea that literally manages everything that we do as humans, right? And it's this idea. You can only act in accordance with your beliefs based on your current emotional and physiological state, right? And so when you are in the physiology of fear, you have access to one set of beliefs. because you're now in a survival experience. And when you are in the physiology of love, you have access to a different set of beliefs. And so when you get mad or angry, right, and you get emotional, you don't actually have access to the rational part of your brain anymore. So you have to use a mechanism to switch back out of that physiology of fear into the physiology of love, and then you have access to your higher faculties. And so happiness is about changing your perception or taking control of your outside world, or inside world. I'm sorry.
Energy, man. I could talk to you all day long. I mean, this is. We have to end the show because it's been 40 minutes, and I have to. And I could talk. You have to come back on. You have to come back on. I mean, this is my.
We can set an appointment right now if you want, James. I don't care. I like talking to you too. So you just let me know.
Through you, I can set it through you right now. We'll do it after the show. We'll do it after the show. As we sign off, we'll do it off camera, and we'll set it. You seriously, I have more questions for you. I think my listeners need to hear this stuff. They need to hear it.